It's the Acting Income Podcast with Ben Hauck, episode 24. How to be a person first and an actor second, with Aleisha Force.
It's the Acting Income Podcast with Ben Hauck. Turn your passion into income, Ben will show you how. With all the resources that you need to make it as an actor in an expensive city. To stay balanced and make money, you really can't go wrong with actingincome.com.
Welcome to the Acting Income Podcast. I'm Ben Hauck, and on this weekly podcast, we talk about acting, money, and balance. Thank you for listening. If you're new to the podcast and haven't subscribed yet, click the subscribe button on iTunes or in your podcasts app, and you'll get weekly episodes as they come out. This is episode 24, titled How to Be a Person First and an Actor Second, with Aleisha Force. The show notes for this episode have all the important links referenced in today's show, which you can pull up right now at actingincome.com/episode 24. And now, here's a word from today's sponsor, the FI-Core Workbook. Several times on the Acting Income Podcast, I've told you about financial core status for the screen actor. It took a lot of time considering the career move, and I put together a downloadable ebook that I sure wish I had when considering going FI-Core. It would have made it a lot faster for me to answer the questions I had about FI-Core and come to an important decision about it much, much sooner. You can download the FI-Core Workbook to see what you keep, lose, and gain when you go FI-Core, so you know if it's where you want to go with your acting career. And should you go FI-Core, I've included an extensive list of things you should do right after. The ebook takes a lot of the headache out of going FI-Core. And since it's related to the acting business, consult your tax preparer to see if the FI-Core Workbook is a full tax write-off for you at tax time. To download the FI-Core Workbook right now, visit ficorecentral.com/workbook. That's ficorecentral.com/workbook. There is a paradox, you may have heard of it, that poses the question, what happens when an immovable object meets an unstoppable force? My guest today is one answer to that question. Her name, quite appropriately, is Aleisha Force. Aleisha arrived in New York City 3 years ago, coming off a solid acting career in a smaller market. And she arrived in New York City with probably the worst possible timing. It was when an immovable object slammed into the city. And that immovable object took her life and nest egg and decimated it. Despite the emotional and financial trauma that event undoubtedly caused, Aleisha, aka the Unstoppable Force, survived. And it's partly because of some life principles she'd developed in the smaller market that still applied in the bigger, more expensive market. Aleisha developed a system to help her decide where to spend her money as an actor. And following that system, she's been able to stay balanced as an actor, which for an actor like herself is very, very important. The immovable object didn't stop Aleisha Force. Aleisha's is very much a personal system, but it's one I think that will resonate with you, especially if you're moving to the big city to pursue your acting career, or if you're looking for some order for spending your money. You're going to be overwhelmed with all of the different places you have to spend your money, and want to spend your money, and hope to spend your money. And if you do the math, you may quickly realize it ain't possible to have it all now. But Aleisha shows how possible it can be to fund your life and your career and your dreams if you just get out a sheet of paper, make some lists, and keep to them. Just before we begin, here's Aleisha's bio. A relatively recent resident of New York City, Aleisha Force moved from the great state of Texas after 10 years as a full-time, no-survival job actress there. Armed with a classical MFA from Southern Methodist University, improv training from the Groundlings, and the ability to fake it till she makes it, Aleisha is steadily making strides in the New York market while maintaining a garden in her kitchen window. And now, people and actors, here's my interview with Aleisha Force. Aleisha Force, welcome to the Acting Income Podcast.
Thank you, Ben Hauck.
It's fantastic to have you here. We have an awesome topic. How to use your money to be a person first and an actor second. Now, I understand that you've developed a system for financing your acting career, along with some great stories to accompany how this system has taken on financial challenges in your life and in your acting career. So, let's start with this system. What is the short story version of your system? And then we can get into the details.
The short story version of my system is, this is the way for me to check in anytime I'm going to spend resources, be it time or money, and make certain that it is improving me, the person first, then feeding my career second.
So feeding your acting career second, but your person, your humanity first. So how do you go about doing that? That could be a very abstract concept in some people's lives. So how do you go about doing that?
Anybody who knows me knows that I love to make a good list. And a lot of actors are list makers. We love making lists. The difference between proactivity and productivity, however, proactive people make lists and productive people do things on that list. So the challenge is doing the thing that you write down on the paper. We can all make a budget and go, yep, in theory, that's a great idea. And then you walk out the door and start spending money. If you're not careful, and you remember this, when I first moved to New York, I would walk out the door and in having a normal day would spend $100. Where did that go? So, especially in a city as expensive as New York, I have taken the system that I developed in Dallas when I was there full-time for 12 years as an actor and moved it to a larger city that challenges the system far more than a smaller market does, simply because of the cost of living.
Well, help me get a sense of what the system is. This is a way, it sounds like, to organize your finances. Let's say you're an actor, you've moved to a city, you're overwhelmed by all the temptations, the things to pursue as an actor, the rent you have to pay, the grocery you have to buy. What do you do? How do you organize your financing and your income and your spending? How do you organize it on a sheet of paper?
3 columns. Column number 1, the person. Column number 2, the actor. Column number 3 is the dream reality. I think Jen Lederer uses this term, the dream reality.
Jen Lederer, who spoke in episode 17 of the Acting Income podcast.
Episode 17 is the only Acting Income podcast I've had to listen to twice, and I'm probably still going to go listen to it a third time because I need to hear over and over again what she says about our relationship with money. This system is my relationship with money, and I found that it helps other people determine theirs. So column 1, personhood, right? I write down all the things that I need to live as a person in New York. I consider the style of living to which I am accustomed. For example, if part of my personhood is going to Starbucks every morning and getting a expensive fancy coffee drink, and that is the way I need to start my day, then I'm going to put that in the budget. I'm going to adjust it later on, but I'm going to put that down. Rent, X number of dollars. Cell phone, X number of dollars. Internet, subway pass, blah, blah, blah. Please note, I don't include acting classes, headshots, any business expense. It's only personhood. Now, in Dallas, I was a member of a much more expensive gym. In New York, I can't afford that. But exercise is still important to me. So how much, honestly, am I going to spend on running shoes, new running attire? Suddenly I'm running in a winter. Dallas doesn't have the kind of winter New York has. I need to buy winter running clothes. These are realistic expenses for me as a person, and I write them all down.
And you write down the title, the type
number
of expense, or the number?
Yes.
I mean, how much you're going to spend on those things.
How much I'm going to spend. God forbid, if my rent is $1,000, I write down $1,000. If my cell phone bill is $100, I write down $100. Exactly how much I need. And with online banking, if you don't know how much you spend in coffee every month, chances are you're a member of a bank that has some sort of online presence, and you can go look month by month what you spend on coffee, and you write that down. And you come up with the number that you need to live in New York.
So you total everything in that personhood column, all those expenses that relate to being you as a person, what it takes to be you and to spend on you. So you get a solid number of what that is.
It's $2,000. I just use nice round numbers. I need $2,000 to be a person in New York, period.
So the next column is
acting, my business. What are the things that I need to spend on my business? I need headshots. If I need headshots in the next 6 months, I write that down, how much I'm going to have to spend, including how much it costs if I'm going to get them retouched, how much it costs to get them printed. I need office supplies. I have an archaic printer. It needs expensive toner. I'm not ready to buy a new printer. I write down the printer costs, how much I'm going to spend on postcards, on stamps, on whatever. And I use my online banking to tell me what that was for the past 6 months, a month, 3 months. You can pick whatever time period you like. How much money does it take for me per month or per 6 months to be an actor? Classes. How many classes do I want to take? If I want to go to this one-on-one or the Actors Connection or what have you, how much money do I need to do that? And then I come up with a number at the end. How much money does it cost me to be an actor? Let's say it's $500 every 3 months. I'm just coming up with nice round numbers. $500 every 3 months. Great. Third column, the dream reality.
the dream reality. So that's different than the personhood, and it's different than the actor. It's the dream.
Yes. We all romanticized the life we would have when we moved to New York, back when we didn't live in New York. You remember. You thought that you were going to get the New York Times every morning, and you were going to sit there in your satin pajamas with your record player, and you were going to listen to Pork Pie Hat, the jazz album, and you were going to sip coffee from Dean and DeLuca. That's part of my dream reality. What would that cost? Do I want to get the New York Times every day? Maybe. Maybe I just want to get the weekend. How much does that cost? $24 a month. I put that in the column. I would love to have a leather tote from Madewell. How much does that cost? Ooh, that's $160. That's going in that column right there. So I select a number of items from my dream reality, and I put that in column 3. Because as practical as I am, if I don't have some dreams for both personhood and actorhood, what if I want to take headshots with Dirty Sugar? She costs a little bit more than the headshots I'm taking now. So the headshots that I take now cost $300. Dirty Sugar costs $650. I would write Dirty Sugar in the dream reality column, and I would write $300 from my headshot photographer in the actor column, just so that I have an idea of how much more money on top of column 1 and column 2 I need to earn to get not only what I need, but also what I want.
Okay, so you have those 3 columns. What it costs to be you as a person, what it costs for you to be an actor, and what it costs for your luxury or dream reality. How do you take these 3 columns and the sums that you've created for each column, how do you apply those to your day-to-day expenses as you leave your apartment and go to spend money at different places?
First and foremost, I got to make certain that I have the income to cover at least column 1, and then, fingers crossed, all of column 2, and then gold star column 3. So how do I make sure that I have an income that serves me as a person, then an actor? And what I advise people who are moving to New York, typically younger, fresh out of undergrad, I say, you got to get an apartment. You got to put your stuff in the apartment. You got to build a home and build a nest. You got to get a job that funds that life. Then you figure out how to live in New York. Then you start auditioning. Get your house, get your job, then start on your career. Because if you put the cart before the horse, you will look like a hot mess coming into that room.
There's a part of me that actually wants to be a little bit of the devil's advocate, because I can think of those hot mess type of people who come and are disorganized, but they actually might catch the tail of a comet or something, that they may succeed even though they're that hot mess in the surface. So why is it important to focus on being a person first and an actor second, and maybe that dreamer third?
It's important for me. This is my system. I find that it's important for me because it promotes a balance. If I wake up and all I think about is doing those classes, going to those EPAs, doing those mailings, getting those postcards out, going to see those shows, being active on social media so that the right people see that I'm engaged in the artistic community, then the business of acting becomes not fun, and there's not a balance. If I enjoy cooking, and on Sunday afternoons, I cook a whole bunch for the week, that's something that I enjoy doing and also saves me money in the long run. So I need to make certain to preserve time for that. And time on Sunday afternoons for an actor sometimes means not working that survival job on that Sunday afternoon. And I got to figure out whether or not I can afford to do that. Well, the numbers on those columns tell me whether or not I can, because I need to make certain to bring in more money than I spend. Basic principle of a balanced budget. So this is me. This is my personal balance. Now, I am not moving here with the help of my parents. I'm not moving here at age 22, right out of college with a showcase to garner interest. I am not moving here from Los Angeles with any giant network television credits. I moved here as a white woman in her mid-30s, and I got to tell you, there's no shortage of us. So I have to find a way to be happy as a person so that if I'm unhappy as an actor, it doesn't affect my well-being. And those resources, whether they be money or time, play into the general balance of happiness.
When I asked you that last question, you talked about what you want to promote. And I thought that's interesting. You as an actor want to promote a certain kind of image. And if you want to promote that hot mess kind of character, I mean, perhaps having that disorganized personal life might be just fine for you. But for you, you don't want to do that as an actor. You want to promote a different image. So you need to have something in your personal life going on that is reflected in your acting life?
The type that I play, and when people go to the show notes or they go to the website, they'll see my headshot, and they will recognize and agree that I play a put-together, tightly wound lawyer, teacher, cop type. That's because it's not too far away from me. If I were routinely cast and routinely seen as a hot mess, then maybe living as a hot mess might work for me. But for me, Aleisha, the actor, and me, Aleisha, the person, it's contradictory. It's not in alignment with what I am and what I play.
I've seen your work. One of the things I was most impressed by your work was seeing some industrial that you'd worked on. And you were so incredible in this corporate video in navigating and managing the material and the copy. You were excellent. And I would think that I would want someone like you representing my brand. Would I want that hot mess person? No, I'd want someone like you. So having that balanced life is important because then it manifests also perhaps in your acting persona. Now, that's not to say that you haven't had some hot, messy things happen in your life. You've had some pretty catastrophic things happen in your life. And this system of being a person first and an actor second, and maybe that dreamer third, has really helped you overcome those challenges, or at least navigate them from what I understand. Could you tell me a little bit about what kinds of challenges your financing system that you're talking about right here has helped you deal with those situations?
The story that I think you're thinking of is the way I arrived in New York. Hurricane Sandy, God bless her, welcomed me to New York City. I drove up here with my now roommate from Texas with our things in a U-Haul. And right before Hurricane Sandy hit, we took cover, we stored our things. We waited until the storm was over so that we could then go down and get our things. And turns out the storage unit flooded. The moving truck flooded. It had to be towed away. I was threatened by the rental truck company that they were going to sue me for the recovery of the vehicle. I didn't have any possessions all of a sudden.
Wait. You moved here a day before Hurricane Sandy, if I'm not mistaken, right?
Technically 2 days before the hurricane made landfall.
You moved here 2 days before the hurricane made landfall. You put your stuff in a storage garage, and then the day after...
I didn't have anything.
You also had a rental truck company coming after you because the vehicle was totaled as a result of the hurricane.
Yes.
You were put in the position of moving to the city, which is already a financial stressor, and then have a hurricane hit and destroy so much of what you have, and also the threat of being sued. So you really had to be a person first, I take it.
Yeah. And the emotional toil that comes with a natural disaster, we don't need to discuss, but we understand that it's a real thing. Not to mention the loss of the personal items. Shakespeare texts that I had prized and worked on, they were all gone. Irreplaceable items, things of that nature. Yes, you can buy new clothes. Yes, you can buy new furniture. But I'd just written the largest check of my life just to get a key to the most expensive place I'd ever lived. And now I don't have anything to put inside of it. Also, it's November and I'm cold. So guess what? I needed to rely on my system. Where am I going to get the resources? I had what I would call a nest egg when I moved to New York, but that nest egg was immediately eradicated by this. So I had to start my survival job as soon as possible, rather than start my survival job 3 months after I got here. I gave myself a cushion. When you move to New York, you're overwhelmed by New York. Well, I was anyway. And so I knew that I was going to need time to adjust. And that time equals money. And so I had the money until Hurricane Sandy decided that I didn't have the money. And so now I got to readjust. But always going back to, how do I be a person first? Well, I need the money, not to take acting classes, not to go buy audition clothes. I need to buy a winter coat. I need to go buy a bed. I need to go buy some dishes. These things have to happen first. And because I had used that system for years in Dallas, Texas, when I was a full-time actor, I had some place to go with my, what do I do now?
One question that's coming to mind also, too, is your system may have worked very well in Dallas, but then you were moving into a market you weren't sure exactly how it was going to change this system. So if there was an actor out there who decided to take your advice of being a person first and spending that way, an actor second and a dreamer third, they figured out what works in their current market, and then they're going to be making the adjustment to a more expensive market. What advice would you give to them for learning how to adapt or how their finances might take a hit?
Well, their categories are going to remain the same. They're still probably going to need to spend money on the same type of things they spent on in Des Moines, Iowa. But the amount of money in that column is going to increase. Everything from rent to headshots to the price of a cup of coffee gets more expensive. The only thing, by the way, ladies, that gets less expensive when you move to New York is the cost of a manicure. It's the only thing that gets less expensive. And certain massages. So there you are. Everyone listening to this outside of New York, oh my God, New York is so expensive. Yes, it is, with those two exceptions. Glad to say that.
Did you find you had additional expenses when you were also moving to the big city? Things that you didn't even forecast?
Expenses related to the weather. I needed warm rain boots. Never needed that before, and those ain't cheap. I needed a real coat. I needed underlayers of clothing. Then, because I now have a survival job, I'm a waiter, I need to buy clothes for that job and I need money to maintain that wardrobe. These were not things that I had to contend with in Dallas, Texas.
So would it be good advice for the actor who's moving from market to a more expensive market? So let's say it costs $2,000 for that person to be a person, to just say, let's tack on $500 more because it's going to cost more.
It's going to cost more. It might even cost even more than you plan. But if you at least have the contingency that, oh, things are going to be more expensive, it's not going to hit you as hard that you're spending more money because you knew this was going to happen. And you knew this was going to happen because the numbers showed that to you. It's not conceptual. It's not abstract. It's a number on a paper.
So you've been applying this system for quite some time for yourself. Now, what changes for the better have you seen happen to your life, to your sanity? And have you been able to take on that dream column? How often are you able to say, you know what, I can spend my money on that?
I can talk about what's happened in my personhood life. Then I can tell you how it's affected my acting career goals and application of money to the acting career goals. And then I can tell you that I'm actually going for the dream column more often. So personhood. This helps me give myself permission to take $15 a week and go to tango lessons. I love Argentine tango. I've been doing it for years. When you move to New York and you realize how expensive everything is, you think that you have to now take all the money and funnel it into either acting classes, marketing things, or your subway pass. I held on to part of what makes me a well-rounded person is going dancing. And some of the dancing that I like best is Argentine tango. Classes are twice as expensive in New York, but I'm going to go once a week and I'm going to spend 15 or 20 bucks. And I'm going to do something that I'm passionate about that has nothing to do with acting. Do you know how many times I have been asked, because it's on my resume, Argentine tango? Tell me about that. Oh, I've been doing it 7-8 years. Where do you go? What do you do? I used to do that, or I took a class once. I had an agent in a meeting talk to me about Argentine tango for 30 minutes. So it preserves my sanity. It reminds me that, yes, I'm an actor in New York, but I don't have to be one of the hundreds of thousands of desperate actors in New York. I can be a person that lives here who has a career as an actor.
But when do you realize you can now afford to do those things? When do you know it's okay?
I know it's okay when I am consistently bringing in the money necessary to satisfy column 1. Column 2 is not taking a hit too often, and I'm even looking at column 3. That's when I know I can relax a little bit and spend $15 on a tango lesson, or to go to a first-run movie, or buy a more expensive bottle of wine.
And let's say you have those aspirations in that dream column, and you really, really want them, but you can't afford them. How do you deal with the neglect of not being able to pursue them right now because maybe your finances aren't in good shape or there isn't consistency?
I want to first talk about what happens to column 2. Column 2 is the acting column. I did move to New York to be an actor, not move to New York so I can shop at Louis Vuitton. So when I have satisfied column 1 and I have budgeted and I'm going after column 2 and I have $150 budgeted for classes, I have to be very, very picky about what class or classes I'm going to take. Am I going to take one class for $150? If I am, who is the person I'm going to spend that $150 on? I'm not going to just throw money at a problem. I'm going to get specific. And in my acting goals, I have certain casting directors that I have targeted with whom I either have a relationship in one way and would like to develop it in another, or they are currently casting something that I know that I am absolutely right for. And I know the copy that I bring in will be beneficial to the both of us to work on. So this helps me make very specific choices about column 2. And when you can get specific, both in business and in acting, you're going to have a greater measure of success over time. Column 3 is the dream column. I also get specific about that. I love shoes. I don't own many shoes. I love looking at shoes. I love shopping for shoes. I like looking at shoes. I don't buy a lot of shoes, but I just think they're beautiful. This helps me focus on what shoes do I actually want to purchase? How much money do I have for a pair of shoes? Just yesterday, I bought myself my first pair of expensive, waterproof winter boots. That was in the dream column. They will be here in 2 days. And I will say, here we go. We are achieving one of the things in the dream column because we made sure to satisfy 1. We're doing okay on 2. Let's go ahead and take a look at 3.
Aleisha Force, is there anything else you want to talk about when it comes to how to use your money to be a person first and an actor second?
Yes. I want to tie this into the messages that people are reading on websites like Backstage. Casting directors are asked to write articles for Backstage. And quite often they are asked, what do you want to see coming in the room? What do you want out of an actor? What can actors do to be better actors? What can actors do to be better actors in New York? And the message that I read quite often is, be a person. Have a personhood. Go do things outside of your career so that you have some life experience, you have some stories, you have some interest. You have something to look forward to after that audition. You don't walk in the door knowing that this is the thing that you've been stressing about for 3 days. No, you walk in the door, you come in, you have fun, and then later tonight, you're going to go down to the park and you're going to learn how to double dutch.
So it's not just you giving this advice to be a person first and an actor second. There's casting directors saying this advice. Backstage is running articles that seem to promote this mindset.
The most recent one I've seen was written by an LA casting director, Aleisha Force. That's one of the ones that I've seen recently. And I've seen it posted and reposted on actor and non-actor friends' Facebook pages. So it's resonating with people. This is just a way to make certain for me that I can get specific application of that concept.
Well, Aleisha, thank you so much for being a guest on this podcast. I understand you're in a show that's coming out later in November 2015.
Yes, I am in a new play, Ben Hauck. Thank you so very much for asking. November 2015, I'm doing Barrier Islands, written for myself and another Southern Methodist University graduate actor, Russell Jonas. It is written by Lizzie V, specifically for us. This is our answer to do your own work. And it's directed by a Drama League directing fellow, Z Ali Khan. We cannot wait to work with that man. It's 2 actors playing 6 parts, and each character interacts with the other character. It's the story of a gated community out on a barrier island. A young woman disappears. Police descend. The ocean is starting to wash up as it normally does with each hurricane. And the residents of this island have to figure out where they stand figuratively and literally on the ever-shifting island.
Reminds me of when you arrived at the island of Manhattan. Where is that playing?
It's playing at the Wild Project.
Aleisha Force, if someone wants to learn more about your acting, where can they find you online?
I have a website, AleishaForce.com, of course.
Aleisha Force, thank you so much for sharing your insights on how to be a person first and an actor second. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Aleisha spoke of a much passed around article from Backstage by casting director Risa Brayman-Garcia and co-written by Steve Braun of the Brayman-Garcia-Braun studio. That article, titled The Actor's Fatal Mistake, is linked in the show notes, and here's a passage from it. You're going to have to craft an active, productive, artistic lifestyle. Most actors don't do it, and most actors' dreams don't come true. Don't make the same mistake. You have the power to create a foundational practice that serves your craft and career and keeps you deeply connected to yourself and the world around you. So if it's Argentinian tango classes that keep you connected to yourself, and if it has nothing to do with your acting career, don't disregard that. Dance. Explore. Feel yourself. Be a person first, an actor second. Hopefully you won't be forced, like Aleisha, into putting your acting career aside and taking care of yourself and pretty much only yourself right when you make a huge step in your acting career. But the point is, it's critical to your success in your acting career to be a person first. The secret to my success in the city, as I like to call it, I talked about in episode 3 of the podcast. That episode is titled, How I Figured Out My Monthly Spending and Saved Up to Move to New York City. That episode goes into my use of a savings sheet to categorize my expenses and compare them with my income to get a crystal clear snapshot of my financial situation. Aleisha's system is much simpler and more elegant than mine. Though if you want a complimentary take on financing your acting career in an expensive city, check out episode 3 in iTunes or at actingincome.com/episode 3. Thanks again to my guest, Aleisha Force. The information on her November 2015 show is linked in the show notes. And that's the show. This episode was sponsored by the FICOR Workbook from FICOR Central. To download the FICOR Workbook, visit ficorcentral.com/workbook. The show notes for this episode are available at actingincome.com/episode 24, where you can also leave a comment on this episode. You can also find Acting Income on Twitter and Facebook. Rate and review this podcast on iTunes by visiting actingincome.com/iTunes. Pitch an episode idea by visiting actingincome.com/pitch. And if you'd like to sponsor an episode, check out actingincome.com/advertise. I'm Ben Hauck, which sounds a little like Ben Hauck. And for more information, as always, check out actingincome.com.